Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's see what happens.
I feel so strongly about you as a person, but I feel like that maybe like the slow burn is how it's supposed to go.
Ouch. So for Kwame, he was having two women that wanted to be with him, seemingly. Chelsea was really saying, I've fully committed to you. You're the only one for me. And he was saying earlier that it feels good to feel needed, but ultimately I think I'm more compatible. I'm supposed to be with Micah. So he went into this meeting trying to clarify. I think he had a lot of optimism that Micah would say that, yeah, you're the one for me. Because Micah had said that previously. And she says, yeah, you're my number one, but this other individual, Paul, is the slow burn that is building. But yeah, the way that it came across, it was reasonable that Kwame was like, yeah, well, I'm pretty sure Micah will choose me. And things have been building over time between Micah and Paul. And so Micah is now breaking up with Kwame. So yeah, that's got to hurt. Is this going to be another one of those times where Kwame's like, okay, well, I guess I'll go to Chelsea, and then we're going to struggle with that the entire season? Normally, that doesn't work out, right? But I guess at least currently, as far as we know, Colleen and Matt are still together, and I know there's some debate, speculations about the quality of their relationship. Some people saying, without really any data, of course, that Matt is abusive and that Colleen is just a scared, kept victim of the relationship. There's no data to support that. There are some minor flags of what we saw on the show for sure, but not enough to go off of to make a determination, of course. Like if someone were to ask me to do a forensic assessment of their relationship, I certainly wouldn't make any conclusions based on what I saw on the show. It would be a indication for further inquiry, of course, to make a determination. And even then, it's hard to know just from interviews and that sort of stuff. And that's when you have full access to everyone and lots of different reports and measures and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so if Matt and Colleen are in a mostly good relationship, they started out similarly where at least it looked to me like Colleen was into, at the very least, Cole, if not Cole and Brennan, more than she was into Matt. She reports later, I think she was rewriting history, that she was into Matt, number one, the entire time, which could be true. It didn't look that way. But anyway, so in that instance, we're seeing where that second choice ends up working out. You know, think of, who was it? It was, what were their names? Jarrett, I believe. And, you know, that thing from season 3. It seems like the second choice options don't usually, Jessica and Matt, these kinds of relationships don't usually work out. So are we going to see that with Kwame and Chelsea? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I think that we should explore other connections.
Okay, so hopefully Micah has a little bit more compassion here. Like, hey, I'm sorry, but if I led you on, that would be one thing that she could apologize for. But I think given her personality, her behavior thus far, I think she's pretty reserved and matter of fact about things. I don't know if that's a defense or a personality trait of some sort, but, you know, she's totally within her right to decide. It's like, well, and even to change her mind, right? That at first Kwame's number one and Paul's number two, and now Paul's number one and Kwame's number two. That's okay. But, you know, you should have some compassion for what Kwame's going through. Hopefully she'll exhibit that.
Okay, cool. That works for me. Well, thank you for taking your time, for listening. It was fantastic getting to know you, and I hope that works out for you to the best of your ability. I truly wish you the most luck. Good.
I was wondering if that was starting off as sarcastic, but sounds genuine, and he's pulling it together pretty well, which is great. There's so many other behaviors that we see in this situation, even going back to season 1 when Barnett had to let down Jessica and Casey. I can't remember her name, the two-letter woman. who seemed like a delightful person. But there's a lot of different reactions you can have: anger and dismissive. I don't want to be with you anyway, or you're a B, or whatever. But he's like, okay, well, I wish you the best, and I truly do. I truly do wish you the best. So yeah, it's good, commendable.
Thank you for being transparent with me. And hey, it's been real. Have a great rest of your night, okay?
Okay.
Cool. Have a good night. Bye.
Yeah, something more from her would have been nice. Some indication that you care, that you feel bad. Now, I would imagine that, I don't know what's going on with her, but I suspect that in all likelihood she does feel bad, but she is generally not very good at communicating her feelings or being forthright, disclosing about what's going on for her. I don't know why that would be. We could imagine parental or family of origin, early childhood reasons. But on the surface of things, if you just look at her behavior, it's pretty cold. She's like at a clothing store and she's just like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to buy that. That kind of, I mean, I don't want to imply that kind of connotation. But anyway, she's, let's rewind and just, there's so many opportunities there for her to say something.
It is a new day. I feel refreshed. How about you?
My day's been good. I feel like...
And then to even start off with saying, my day's been good. Even though that's true, you might want to say something like, well, I've had kind of a rough day because I was worried about this conversation. You know, I don't know, something. So many opportunities.
We have both been like, you know, each other's like favorite person through a lot of this.
Yes.
And like, I wouldn't want it any other way.
And then even that statement, what does that mean? We've been each other's number one for many days, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I think what she's trying to communicate is, I'm honored or glad to have spent this time with you. I think that's what she's trying to say. But another way you could interpret it is that she's saying in a self-centered way, I wouldn't have it any other way because it's just a part of my journey. Without taking into account like how what she's about to say is going to drastically alter the rest of his life and his vibe of being on the show, right? She's completely within her rights to have a conundrum between two people and to change her mind. That is fine. She did not lie. She was pretty clear, because that's another thing, is like you could have a conundrum, but you don't want to deceive, which some people have done on the show. And she was pretty clear with him that, look, you're my number one, but I do have this other relationship that's kind of a slow burn. When I heard that, I was thinking, uh-oh, that doesn't sound very good for Kwame. I mean, who knows, but that would be a caution of like, well, maybe this won't work out my way. So she was upfront. I don't know the timeline, if she could have said more to Kwame earlier, but anyway. So yeah, there's just so many other things she could have said in this moment.
I feel so strongly about you as a person, but I feel like that maybe like the slow burn is how it's supposed to go. I think that we should explore other connections.
And then that phrase, I think we should explore other connections. There's so many other things you could say. Like, yeah, okay. But what he's dealing with right now is, oh my God, the rest of my life is not the way I thought it was going to go. Oh my God, the love of my life, the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, the person I'm in love with that I've been thinking about all this time, the person I have all this enthusiasm and energy toward is now rejecting me. Like, to think about like, well, you know, you'll find someone else. It's like telling someone when their pet dies, their cat dies or something, like, oh, well, you know, you can always just get another cat, you know, that kind of stuff. Or even asking people like, when are you going to get another cat? It's like, hey, you know, I'm not really there yet. So yeah, it's there's so many opportunities.
That works for me. Well, thank you for taking your time, for listening. It was fantastic getting to know you, and I hope that works out for you to the best of your ability. I truly wish you the most luck. Thank you for being transparent with me. And Hey, it's been real. Have a great rest of your night, okay?
Okay.
And I talk about this often, about ethical breaking up with someone, ethical dumping of someone, that there are things in case by case, it changes, but there are considerations that should be considered. And one of them is that you should try to help the other person deal with the breakup as best as you can within reason. You know, sometimes you break up with someone and they're very unreasonable in their reaction to it, but within reason, you should do what you can to help them, to let them down easy, to help them with the way they narrativize the situation. Because, you know, hopefully if the relationship wasn't horrible, you would hope that the person that you're breaking up with isn't damaged by you. And if you just break up in a very simple way, the way most people do break up these days, then there's a big temptation for the person you're breaking up with to conclude that you never loved them, you never cared, and that they don't deserve love. And you want to do the best you can to give them the opportunity to not conclude that, which involves you demonstrating that you did care and that you do understand what you're doing by breaking up with them, that you feel bad about it, that you loved them once, but you fell out of love with them for whatever reason. And it doesn't have anything to do with them. It just has to do with, you know, whatever it is you want to say that makes sense and isn't lying, right? And you want to be there with them if they want you to be there to talk. You know, if they're just like, hey, I have a question. When did you fall out of love with me? Or did you ever love me? Or did you cheat on me? Is that why you broke up with me? Or can we be friends? Or is it viable? You know, there's questions or emotions that they might want to get, you know, to tell you. It's like, hey, I got to tell you, you ruined my life, or whatever, you know, feeling it at the moment. And of course, you don't have to be abused if you're breaking up with someone, but if it's non-abusive and the person's having emotions and you're up for it, then I think it's ethical to be there as they express that. That's not the advice that you'll get from people on the internet. Presumably, the person you were in a long-term relationship with, you cared and respected, and they were a companion, they were a friend. It was someone that you cared deeply about. And why should that just completely end when you break up with someone, right? Most people will say, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to let it go. You got to break up, let them down, tell them firmly, and move on with your life. You're not obligated to that person. Yeah, and it's true. You're not obligated to them. But if you have half a heart, I would imagine that you would care. Now, there are exceptions, right? If the person you're breaking up with is just manipulating you with their emotions to try to keep you involved, if they're going to berate you and abuse you, then obviously that's not okay. And you should draw boundaries with that or cut off from someone in situations like that. But I don't know. There's just so many other things she could have said. There's just so many other things.
Cool. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that people are going to hate her. The way they're editing it, or the way that she is, the way that things turned out, I think that she will be enemy number one among the viewership. I just don't think anyone is hateable on these shows. We would assume that she does have a heart, she does care. So what would prevent her from exhibiting that or connecting with it or something? Who knows? I mean, people have traumas of all sorts and defenses of all sorts. One of the defenses is to become shut down and to become non-expressive. And I've been commenting on how her and who she chose, Paul, both of them are fairly reserved and not very expressive, and that maybe that's why they like each other. Maybe that's why they vibe. I don't know. It also could be a recipe for disaster, because if no one's expressing anything, then the relationship just fizzles out. It can, not all the time. But I would assume that her lack of expressiveness, her lack of being able to act on her care of another human being in this moment is a result of a defense. So why would someone have a defense of that? Well, if you were raised in a way that generally did not reward emotional expressiveness at all, or you were punished for it, then of course you would shut that down, not only behaviorally, but even neurologically to some extent. So I don't know. It's hard to know, but there's criticism that can be discussed here, but I just don't think that hate and ridicule and bullying and attacking of her. And I worry that given her presentation on the show and the way that she is, she could incur a lot of bullying online, given the way that, because she comes across as very privileged, right? Who knows? But she comes across that way, and people love to go after people like that. And certainly we can talk about that. We can even talk about the possibility of racism being involved in this. Of course, the show will purport that they don't know each other's ethnicity, but there are indications of ethnicity that might be picked up in all the various conversations. Could that be a factor here? There's no indication of that, but could be an influence, who knows? And so we can talk about that. Maybe even she'd be willing to talk about that. I don't know. But we can criticize, but we can't bully and hate. And I hope that y'all, when you are involved in those situations, one, you don't bully and you don't go after these people. And two, you, within safety guidelines, you push back on other people bullying them and say, hey, you know, it's fine to criticize, but to hate and to try to tear someone down is not fair. It's not okay to do that. It's immoral. It's literally evil to go after someone and try to make their life miserable just because you feel like it. That's one of the pillars of evil, really. And it's not okay. And it's very prevalent on the internet. It rarely, but it does happen to me. I am the victim of that pillar of evil on the internet. It's not committed by evil people often, but it is an evil act. There's things that at least I would categorize as evil, and doing things unjustified. There are people that are deserving of our anger and our criticism online and our mob justice, our mob anger. There are companies out there that are doing horrible things to people, to the environment, to labor unions, to exploit, to literally put people's lives in danger, literally cause the deaths of humans because of unjust labor practices. There are political groups that are trying to erode freedoms. They're trying to pull us back into the past where certain groups of people had a tremendous amount of power. They're trying to oppress. They're trying to get rid of protections to the environment of which we all depend on. There are people deserving of our mob attacking, of movements to push back. To think that there could be a week in the upcoming weeks where Micah would get more hate and more bullying and more negative press than all those other groups, a certain percentage of our society, that they would go after Micah more than these other groups, and in a worse way, is abhorrent. So one, I hope you don't participate in it, and two, if you see it, I hope you push back on it, because that's justice. That's the right thing to do, in my opinion. Okay, well, let's end there, and tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.